The capital D starts out with a typical thick uh, vertical stroke. And remember, stay with the left side, the far outside. That establishes the width of your letter. And then come back and do the inside of that, overlapping about 50% of your brush to get that 1.5 inch thick. And then go ahead and flatten out your brush one more time to make that radius. The radius part is the front of that D is the deal breaker. That's where it's going to take some practice to get that radius equal on the top as the bottom to match, and italic. So you're dealing with two different situations. One is that you're italicizing, and the other is trying to get a nice consistent radius for that front part of that front stroke of that D. I was shaky there for some reason. This is my first stroke of the day, so bear with me. And then I just come around, and I try to get to that thick stroke on the bottom. But if you can't, it's fine, because you're going to come back and do and start your serif, because it looks a lot nicer to start the serif and blend it in. You can blend it in like this is the part where you can kind of tweak it till you get it to the right width. But you don't have a lot of wiggle room because of that thin. You want to keep that top and bottom thin. That's going to look a lot nicer if that's thin. It doesn't get too thick on the top and the bottom of the D. You want to still maintain that thin stroke at those 2 points. After you get it to where you're satisfied with the width, then you can just go ahead and fill in your thick stroke, and you're done with the D. But like I said, getting that belly is the that's the tricky part. Getting that one consistent on the top and bottom. Like I say, you're dealing with an italic and trying to make it look the same on the top and the bottom, equal and consistent. The lowercase d is starting out and basically making an A, the first portion of an A. And you want to contract your brush like a ballpoint pen, thinking of it that way, and making that those outside lines. So once you've got that strange elliptical egg shape to where you're liking it, then that part of the letter is done. You're home free from that point on, and you can fill in that thick, flatten out your brush. Come in at an angle, the same angle as the thin stroke that you've got there, and then just push down on your brush. As you get a little more than halfway, start letting up. And I didn't spin it all. You can see I didn't spin it all, the brush at all. So just it contrasts up and gets thin naturally as it gets down to the bottom of that loop. Then it's just a flat brush, bringing it down along the axis. And here's where you got to spin your brush clockwise to make that point, and then you're going to repeat that to make that stroke thicker. So you overlap 50% of your brush. Come down flowing, start spinning, and meet that other point. Bam. Flatten it out to create the serif. Straight across, meet the point. Flatten out again to round off that serif. And finally, the terminal. And a little cleanup. And there you go. For the uppercase E, it's the same starting stroke, the vertical outside. And again, doubling that stroke. Brush and a half width. And then I like to go ahead and establish the width of the letter, which locks it in where I can see and match the other letters to be sure that it is proportionate and equal in width. So I go ahead and I paint these beaks, these top and bottom portions, so that I can lock in the width of the letter. So I know where I'm at. And these kind of angle slightly. They don't follow the axis as much. They kind of kick out. The top one kicks out on the bottom to the right, and the bottom one kicks out on the top to the right. So you kind of see that in the still a little bit. And then now you can establish. You can just go from your serif straight over to that the end of where those beaks end on the base lines, and it makes a nice tight corner there. You got somewhere to go. It's an A to B. I like to try to do as many A to B's as I can because that makes the letter cleaner and less strokes. And this one center bar, I just kind of go maybe 2/3 or so between the lowercase base lines, and I'll probably, I'm rounding off the serifs here, and I'm going to bring down that middle vertical bar a little bit more too. It just needs a little bit more height. That round was coming off horizontal with the brush and then spinning the brush counterclockwise. This is as though I'm going to make this line again, but this time I'm going to make a radius spinning the brush clockwise. It just simply makes the round below. Same with this one. It's a vertical brush stroke, spinning the brush clockwise, going in that little spot. And then the final round, coming in slight angle, almost a 45, and then spinning the brush counterclockwise to create that round. You want to keep your hand in one position as much as possible whenever you're lettering. The lowercase e is actually a very fun letter. Just got to be careful not to lean it forward. I have a tendency to do that. And just make sure you keep the bottom point and the top point on the axis. Also, don't make it too thin. This one could be a little wider. You want to try to match the other letters. Executed the same way as the A with a retracted brush. Very similar to the back side of the A. You come down to the end, round it up on top. And then you can see where I'm ending up. I experimented a lot until I got to a point where I felt like it was just a little ways below half the letter from the top to the bottom. You can see there to bring that junction. Then I just finish off with this this portion of the letter, which is again like an extended terminal, similar to the C, the lowercase c, rather than trying to make a loop or a round or radius. And then go ahead and flatten out the brush, fill in your thick. Don't make that point up there too thick. Try to keep that as thin as possible. The whole beauty of this letter is thick and thins. And so you want to really try to make those thin points at the top and the bottom thin. Same with the front thick portion of the letter. I come in at it at the angle of the stroke that's there, and then I just use the side of my brush, and that's how I'm drawing that point. The brush is actually vertical at that point. And of course the capital F is basically an E without the lower leg, so you're just going to execute it in the same way. Always starting with your outer stroke. I just go ahead and I match the width and location of the top bar, the beak, and the middle bar all those are the same as the E. There, I'm just showing that I'm going to match the width of the E. That keeps a consistency with the letter. All these letters are about the same thing: consistency of width and thickness of strokes. That's what's going to make this letter look really, really nice when executed in an actual project. And again, when doing the serifs, always try to match whatever you've done in other letters, the length of the serif. And then flatten out the brush to round everything off. That's horizontal brush direction right now, horizontal brush direction. Same with the bottom, horizontal brush direction. Just rounding everything off. And this one's still horizontal, and I twist the brush counterclockwise to make that round on the beak. And again, for the middle bar, serif brush is vertical on edge and then rounding off clockwise. And then starting out kind of a slight angle, just kind of tucking in that one corner just to bring it around, spinning counterclockwise to make that round. The trickiest part about the lowercase f is to keep the first stroke on the axis. That's really important, otherwise it's going to look out of place with the other letters. It starts out with a slightly angled, slightly flat brush, and you're just going to follow that axis line straight down and make a nice little soft swoop at the end and just taper that off like that. How far down you go is not really a huge thing. It's just a little bit of matter of taste and how it looks with the lettering. Then you're going to come back and thicken that. Start out tapered, push your brush down, and as you start to get down to the bottom, start letting up, because you want this to be a real nice thin stroke at the bottom. And to create those little circular finishes at the ends of the letter, you just push your brush in at an angle and then draw it back into your thin stroke. So it's to push in and draw it back. And at the top, it's pulling to the right with a flat brush, and then basically just drawing an ellipse. You're just going to come around, stop, and come back, and start it there. And those look better smaller. So it looks more elegant when they're smaller and not real big. I just think all of those little rounds look better small. And then this is just a crossbar that's it's a simple straight line.